What's up, YouTube? I'm Robert, and this is the B1KER Bar Podcast live stream, episode 95. Oh man, 5 more and it's going to be 100. I feel like I should do something special for the 100th episode, but I'm not really good at coming up with something special. So you guys can shoot that down in the comments. Give me ideas for what I should do for the 100th episode, because I don't know. I don't really have any great ideas, and honestly, I'll just keep booking people, and it will just be like, hey, you're lucky 100. You walked in the door, you get a free koozie or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, today's guest is going to be Outbound Lighting. So if you guys aren't familiar with them, they're a light company, and before light mountain bike lights. So like if you like night riding, I guess I should be like, they're not IKEA lights. So anyways, we're going to talk to them in a minute. Before we do, though, I want you guys to do me a favor. If you don't subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And if somewhere along the line you're listening to this and you're like, man, I really enjoy this, hit the thumbs up button. That's going to help me stay motivated and keep going, as well as maybe giving me a follow over on Instagram or Facebook. So if you want some content that's free, and you want to kind of see what's going on and with the channel a little bit more than just watching the videos or listening to the podcast, go swing by Instagram and follow over there. Or if you're over 40, you can do it on Facebook, like the other 800 people over there. I don't think kids use Facebook. So if you're not on Instagram, you're dating yourself. Anyways, let's move on from that. What I would like is anybody out there that has an extra buck that wants to go ahead and throw it towards the beer fund here. That would be great. If you can swing by patreon.com/biker B1KER and throw me $1, man. It's only $12 a year. And with that, you get access to the coupon codes that I set up with different people that we've had on the shows. And if you really want to help the channel grow, help me get to a different level, then there's some other tiers for that. There's a $5 tier. You'll get a sticker pack and some cool handwritten letter, access to extra content. So I've been making videos that are only for Patreon. I have like rough cut videos, which are like a longer cut of the videos that go on YouTube. And then I have videos that are just additionally extra. So it's, man, I just got all messed up there. I was like reading a text message at the same time trying to talk. What do you know? Anyways. So anyways, it really helps me out. If you guys want to swing by and help out the channel, there's also another tier where you get a boatload of swag, and that really helps the channel too. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want, but I really appreciate everybody that's out there that's been contributing to the channel so far, and all of this stuff. There's so much out to it that I would have never thought was going to be a cost. I thought when I first started, it was like, get a GoPro and start a YouTube channel. That's all you need to do. And next thing you know, I'm like, oh, wow, there went freaking $600 on lights. I don't know how I did that. Anyways, so everybody's got their way to help. You can help for free by hitting subscribe. You can help for free by going to Instagram. You can help for free by going to Facebook. You can help with a little bit of cash by going to Patreon. It's up to you, however you want to do it. You could even super chat while we're talking. I don't always have a chance to say thank you to people live on the show, but I'll try to catch it. But if you throw a super chat up, that helps a lot as well. So, hey, it's Friday. Let's get on with this, man. I'm over talking about this stuff. Let's bring Tom on. What's up, Tom?
Hey.
How's it going?
It's good. Yeah. It's nice and sticky and sunny out here in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, you guys have the good dirt up there, man.
Well, not right now.
Not right now.
It's rained in quite a while. It rained a little bit last night, but it's moon dust everywhere right now. It's brutal.
Really? Yeah. Northern California has been pretty rough lately, that's for sure. So these things happen.
Pretty similar here.
What is that?
I imagine it's pretty similar here. Once the sun comes out, and we got a bunch of clear cut in Capitol Forest here, it just dries out so fast in the summer, but it'll get wet before we know it.
Yeah. How long you been riding?
I've been riding for just over 11 years. I'm not quite over 40, but I still use the Facebook.
Yeah, you got the Facebook. I got one too, man.
Yeah, I got a memory that just showed up the other day of 11 years ago, my first mountain bike.
Oh, nice. What was the bike?
It was a Surly Karate Monkey set up single speed, and I had an 80 mil Fox 32 on it with with these handlebars, these on one Mary like super sweet back bars.
Oh, wow.
They're super.
So your first mountain bike was a single speed?
Yeah.
You really don't like yourself, do you?
Well, I just didn't like floppy things attached to a bike that's supposed to survive stuff. And I thought, yeah, single speed's more like, it seemed like an easier way to get into the sport. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it's
right on, man. Yeah, that's definitely that's a way to get started quick with the single speed action there.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Outbound Lighting, man. What do you guys do over there?
Sure. Yeah. So we're a small company. I think it's coming up on year 4 now. My partner Matt is the founder of the company, and so he stood this up years ago on Kickstarter. And so he's an optical engineer from the automotive lighting industry. So he worked at Diode before this and designed a bunch of lighting products for aftermarket and OEM stuff. And he actually went on a ride with a buddy of his and went riding at dusk, and they had lights, and he basically looked at what the guy had and was like, this is the best the industry has to offer. And I don't know what lights the guy had at the moment. I don't know if they're Amazon specials or what, but he just thought, I could do way better than this. We can put some effort into some novel concepts around.
What was the company you said he worked for? I said something at the same time, so I didn't hear what you said.
Diode Dynamics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they do a lot of aftermarket stuff for headlight bulbs and side markers and things like that.
Yeah, I noticed that on your website that you guys were saying that, at least the way it read on the website was like, you're not necessarily trying to make the brightest light. You're trying to make a light that has a better pattern to it.
Yeah, and that, we can dive into that whole philosophy on how we design stuff, but the high level summary is, yeah, we're not into the pissing match of trying to make the brightest thing possible.
Right.
As cool as it is to make lights that can cook eggs on top of them and stuff like that. It's good YouTube hook, but it's not actually a good product for out in the field. So we're basically trying to optimize products for specific applications for riding, and every different mounting location and type of riding needs a different type of light. And giving it too much power can screw up your vision in certain scenarios, depending on where it's mounted, and can also make it larger battery, heavier, have to have external batteries and wires and all this other complex stuff. And so it ends up being something that's it's no longer optimized for the application. It's just trying to be the brightest and therefore better, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to educate people on what lumens actually mean and what to look at in lights, because it's not just that. It's kind of like buying a bike just based on how much suspension travel it has. Like, DH bike should be best for everything, right? Downhill widths.
Right.
But it's not. And I think that is very similar to what we see with lights. That's kind of what Matt's carrying over from the automotive industry is, your headlights are limited legally by the DOT on how much light they can put out. And your car headlights put out about 1,100 lumens per light. So if you're limited to around 2,000 lumens from your headlights and you can drive comfortably at 100 miles an hour in the dark, we ought to be able to make a bike light where you can travel 20 miles an hour downhill comfortably without having to have 10,000 lumens and enormous battery packs and all of that. So
that's crazy. I didn't know that headlights on a car were only 1,100 lumens.
Yeah, they put limits on everything, right? Everything.
Right. Even the high beam, huh? I guess the high beam is just the same thing. It's just pointing higher, right? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah, so the limits are slightly different on those, but essentially those are then doubling the output and they're going above the horizontal cutoff. So low beams have a cutoff so that you're not glaring and blinding oncoming traffic, and the high beams fill in everything else. So they don't actually put more light on the road. They just fill in the rest of your environment, which actually helps you drive more safely if you're out on a dark road by yourself.
Yeah, and then if you have a lifted truck like me, everybody thinks your low beams are high beams. You're like, oh, really? That's great. Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for flashing me, man.
Right, because now you're in a situation where you can't put your lights low enough to actually angle them correctly. You have to either angle them straight down to avoid glaring people, or out so that you can see. And
I just do the friendly, like, here's my high beam, so now you know.
Yeah. Trust me, it could be worse.
Right. Yeah, check this out.
Man.
So it's all right, man. They I'm sure they're there's the guys with the LEDs that are driving around the cars, man. They'll definitely blind you, and they can be on, I don't even know what rating that they're set on, but
well, and that could be a whole nother rabbit hole if you want to dive into it, but LEDs isn't the culprit. It's aftermarket bulbs that don't adhere to DOT standards. And
there you go.
You can't emulate the exact shape of a filament in a halogen bulb, which is what the reflectors are designed for. So if the LEDs are slightly different geometry and they're emitting light from different areas, your beam pattern changes. And that's why you don't have a sharp cutoff anymore. You've got glare up and artifact where it's supposed to be.
That makes sense.
And because
basically what I heard you say is they're buying the Amazon knockoff lights and they're like, fuck the rules in the US.
Pretty much, yeah. If it doesn't say this is street legal, then it is probably going to blind the crap out of everybody coming on. And,
yeah, but you'll see great.
Yeah, it's good in some ways, but there's a reason that they have regulations like that. And it's Wild West out there in some ways.
So years ago, I had never done a night ride before, and I don't know what the circumstance was. I mean, I think it's probably just had to do with winter, and as the sunlight gets shorter, and you want to go on those after work rides in the middle of the week. Finally, one of us was like, "Hey, let's get some lights. We're going to go do this night ride," and we went out and we did our first night ride, and it was like we were hooked, man, because it took every trail that we ever rode and maybe rode too many times and was kind of bored of, and just made them all brand new again. Yeah. And that first year that we kind of got, me and my friend group got into night riding, we actually rode night rides through the entire year. Like, even once it got to be summer, we were still riding night rides because we're like, dude, it's cooler. We don't even care. Like, my one buddy, he could go to his kid's baseball practice and come home, eat dinner, tuck them into bed. We'd go meet at the trailhead at like 9:00 at night and ride until midnight, and then have a couple of beers. And next thing you know, we're like, why did we do that?
Exactly. I mean, it all depends on the area you're in and the type of riding you're into. And I mean, there's tons of different reasons to ride at night. You picked up on several right there. Just the fact that it's cooler in the summer. You got friends with kids that have to put their kids down before they can have, like, one parent gets free time. Like, there's all kinds of reasons to do it, but it's what you make of it. And you can make it like, oh, I just want to be able to ride more, so lights are a necessity, or I want to go have an experience that's totally different from riding in the day. And so my light setup matters, and when I do it and where I want that experience, not just trying to get on the bike more. I
try to tell people all the time, I'm like, honestly, like, it doesn't sound like, if you're a guy that just rides bike in the daytime, you're like, why would I want to do that? Doesn't even make any sense. Like why, and it's like, because I'm telling you, it's really fun. It's really, really fun, for one thing. Yeah. And I will say this, and I wholeheartedly believe in this, that if you do night riding, it makes you a way better rider in the daytime. Mm-hmm. Because of, and we can talk about this.
I agree with a lot of this, but
but we can talk about this because there's probably some good reason. I mean, you got some science behind you instead of me just making up shit. But like, the way that the lights are, depending on which one you choose, halogen or LED, like, either way, they change the way that you look at features. And what I've noticed is that because of that light color, or because of the shadowing, you have to ride a lot looser, and you'll be going and you think you're going maybe slower, maybe you are going slower, I don't know. But once you're in the daytime, now you're riding that same trail, but you have this like better sense of vision. And all of a sudden it's like, then things like really lock in, because you're like, holy shit, dude, I'm like cooking, man, you know?
Well, and so there's so much that goes into that. And I think that's a good bridge to like, what are you looking at when you're looking at a trail from daytime versus nighttime? During the day, if you're in the desert or under tree canopy, it's very different. But the time of day matters. If you're on a trail riding into the sun coming at you, then the glare from the sun, the shadows that it casts on features on the ground, very different from the light being at your back versus coming from the sides. And you can ride a trail multiple times a day and have it look totally different, because you might have a really chunky raw trail, but if the light's at your back, it's not casting shadows from those objects from your point of view. So the trails look flatter when the light's behind you, like low in the sky, versus directly up north ahead or coming in from the side. And so that depth on trails, depth really matters, because you're trying to read the trail like section by section as it rapidly goes past you. So your brain is taking in not just the thing you're looking at, but the whole environment around you, really rapid fire. And every frame, you have to be able to get as much detail as possible. And it has to look three-dimensional and real. So if there's no shadows on the trail, if there's no, if the light isn't coming in from a certain direction, if it's just diffuse, if it's bright enough daylight, that's pretty ideal riding conditions, because you can still see pretty well. But if you have, like I'm talking about, with the sunlight at your back, you're riding at dusk, that trail might look totally flat. And what happens is, if you have a trail that's super rocky or chunky and there's rocks sticking up out of the dirt, but because there's no shadows, you can't tell if it's actually sticking up or if it's kind of just a rock that's embedded in the dirt. And so you can't read it as two-dimensional when you're doing it really quickly, kind of out of the corner of your eye, So having a light,
but I think you run into that with the lights though too, then, because of where your light is always coming from behind it like that. And then there's something to do with the color of the light that really kind of makes, at least here in Northern California, I haven't ridden night ride everywhere else, but man, when it gets dusty, like that color of the light really makes it hard to differentiate the rock from the trail.
Right. And you wouldn't think that would be that critical, but it definitely is, because the terrain vary a lot. So the way you ride them or weight them or corner off them, you need to modify that based on what you're seeing. But dusty is one thing that's totally different from color and from where the light is coming from. So, but they all matter for sure. When it's dusty, I mean, you don't want to be behind other people, because you're going to be shining through clouds of dust all the time, and it's just going to be hard to see the trail. That's just a physical phenomenon that it doesn't matter what light you have, it's going to be hard to see through that. I would advise to just turn off your helmet light in that scenario if you have both helmet and handlebar, and just use your light, because anything on your head that's closer to your eyes is just going to flash you right in front of your eyes, and it's going to be harder to see the trail.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't really think about it. I just break. I'm like, you know what? See you later, dude.
Well, there's definitely that. You're trying to ride quick though, and I think this comes back more to like how you perceive the trail. Having a handlebar mounted light makes a big difference versus just a helmet light, and we have this conversation constant with people. There's a lot of personal preference. Everybody's got their own way of doing what they're comfortable with for a number of different reasons. What I found is that most people have a preference because it's the way a buddy did it, and that's how they did it the first time, and they've never done it differently. And so that's the best way, which is not scientific. So
what's the science best? I want to hear the science best way.
Well, the science best way is to try different setups and see what works. Because I know what works best for me, and there's a reason we design our lights the way we do, and it's based off of that. It's wanting to be able to perceive the trail as realistic as possible, as quickly as possible while you're riding. And a handlebar light helps a lot with that, because it gives you depth, because it's all about where your eye is from, where your eyes are, and where your lights are mounted in respect to that. So if you have a light mounted right next to your eyes pointing out, you get no depth of field whatsoever, because you have no shadows, because they're in the same axis pointing at everything. But if you have a light down here, I'm not
so for people that are listening, he's saying the light that the handlebar light is that here.
All right. This is the podcast. Yeah.
That's all right. Some people are watching too, so it's both. So
yeah. So let me use words slightly more. So if your bar light is lower, it's kind of scraping the ground forward.
Yeah.
And you're looking down on top of that because your eyes are above the handlebar light. And so what happens is that if you have a rock or a root sticking out of the trail, that'll cast a shadow down the trail from your handlebar light, which is, it sounds like shadows are a bad thing. It's a bad word, but they're not for three-dimensional analysis of
it helps you understand what the hell's going on.
Right.
For a long time, I only rode with the headlight, like one on my head, because let's just say that's all I could afford, right? Yeah. And to me, that made the most sense. And that's what I tell people, like, hey, if you're only going to buy one for your head, because your handlebars aren't always turned the way that the trail is going. And sometimes you want to be looking around this corner and your handlebars aren't going that way, and it's not gonna play out as well. But I then follow up with, even if you're going to buy, like, if you're going to buy a good light for your headlight, like, do yourself a little bit of a favor and at least go to Amazon and buy like the cheapest freaking $20 knockoff freaking light that you can put on your handlebars. Because the first time that you're hauling balls down some trail at like 20 miles an hour and for some reason your light turns off, all of a sudden you realize it was probably worth having another light on your bike somewhere. And fast.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't recommend using Amazon as a reliable backup per se, but I completely agree with that from a safety standpoint. Shit happens, right? Like, we try to make stuff as reliable as possible, but stuff still happens in the field. And having a backup for anything is good. That's why you carry tools and spare parts, spare food on the trail, because stuff happens. So
I mean, I'll tell people, hey, if you have the money, buy a couple good lights, or buy them at least, buy the cheap one from the respectable company. But at the very least, some people, they're like, they don't want to hear that at all. They don't want to spend any money. I'm like, look, I'm telling you right now, I don't want to see you go over a cliff because your freaking light went off and you didn't know where you're going anymore.
Yeah, turns out being able to see is important for riding a bike.
And when you're out there far away from anything else and your lights go out, it's fucking dark, like real fucking dark.
Really dark. Yeah, no, and I mean, I agree with you that at least if you're not going to buy Outbound, you should buy Outbound. But if you're not going to buy Outbound, just don't buy Amazon lights. Bezos has enough money, and they're cheap Chinese garbage. They're just rip-off lights trying to sell anything they can for $20.
The things that worry me the most about those is how many of those batteries like just blow up and start like burning. And it's like, where are you going to like?
It's not a lot, but it's a lot more than literally every other manufacturer on the planet.
Right. It's enough to like be like, well, if you really don't want your house and you're okay with it burning down, go for it, man.
There was a ride when I was living back in North Carolina. I did a bunch of my riding out in Pisgah, and we did a ride with a buddy of mine who had this was before Outbound, but I was still the light guy because I worked for Cree, the LED company that manufactures the LEDs. We were on a ride, and a buddy of mine had a cheap Amazon light with the battery pack in his Camelback, and we were riding behind him and started seeing smoke coming out of the Camelback, and the battery pack was melting inside his backpack, and they ended up throwing it in a dumpster off the side of the trail. Because something shorted inside of it because it was just poorly made and it's not sealed for waterproofness or anything. And it's like, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
It does.
It does.
But we're not trying to scare people into buying a quality product. The way I look at it is most people, if they're really into mountain biking, they spend some money on their bikes. It's not a $300 bike from Walmart. So I figure if somebody's spending a few $1,000s on their bike, they can spend a few hundred to be able to see after.
It's funny how people are though sometimes, man. It's like, yeah, dude, I got a freaking $8,000 bike. And then all of a sudden they're like, I only buy $7 shorts though. You're like, really?
No, absolutely. Everybody's got their thing, right? And I try not to argue with stuff like that. It's personal preference where you want
100%,
is yours. But like, it just kills me to see $25 lights attached to an $8,000 bike when I know that person is now severely limited in what they can do.
Right.
Like you can't see, so you can't ride as well.
Yeah.
But that also, I mean, that kind of was one of those things I also talk about a lot, is what kind of experience do you want out of night riding? And there's some people who want to basically ride after dark, and they want it to be just like they're riding during the day.
Right.
We can help with that. That's what we're trying to do, is make a light system so that you can see the entire trail as well as possible and ride as similarly to the daytime as possible.
Yeah.
Some people kind of like this, like tunnel vision, can't really see, and they're having to be more fluid, as you say, where they just kind of react to things as they come up because they can't see as well. That's fine. That's an experience you can have, and then you can use a cheaper, shittier light for that. Hopefully, it won't,
I basically want it to look like a neutron star is coming down the trail with me, and I want that to last for as long as I possibly want to ride. So it's definitely a conundrum for me. But before we get into that, because there's a lot to unpack there.
Sure.
When I first started, one of the hardest things for me to really wrap my head around was whether I should be buying a halogen light or an LED light. And it seems like most of the companies now are leaning towards LED. But could you maybe like clear that up for people, or why you would choose one or the other, or why you guys what you guys chose for your product?
Yeah. So the answer is you will buy an LED light because that is all that's left on the market. That is completely supplanted halogen. Night Rider, they were the industry starters, I suppose, from surf lights into bike lights. And they used a standard halogen MR16 bulb in some of their first bike lights. And they actually held on to those for a while with the big ass water bottle battery. It had to be that big to last for an hour and a half at 200 lumens, and bulbs you could actually burn yourself on because they're halogen. Those are all but gone now. So anything you actually find for sale now that isn't like a museum showpiece or like a historical thing is going to be LED. That said, LEDs can be whatever you make them. So pretty much every manufacturer in the industry sticks with around a 6,000 Kelvin color temperature. And so when I say that, it's basically a cool white, a bluish white. And I think that's what most people associate with LEDs, is this kind of harsh, cool white light. But we can make...
you can, because you can, like, I mean, the studio lights that I'm using, I can turn them to yellow. So that's just lowering the Kelvin, basically.
Yeah, and so there's a bunch of different ways to do that, but basically you can vary the phosphor structure to give you exactly what spectrum of light you want. And it's not just a single monochromatic blue, red, green, whatever. It's for all common high power white LEDs, it's a blue peak with a broad spectrum white phosphor. So basically what that means is it's trying to fill in the entire visible spectrum of light in a fairly even manner, but it biases towards red and yellow or towards greenish blue, depending on what color temperature you want. If you want cool white, it's going to be more towards the blue end of the spectrum. If you want warm white, it's going to be more towards the yellow end. And obviously for like residential lights, color quality matters a lot more, because you don't want to put a light in your house that's giving you headaches and you can't tell colors apart and looks like a street light. That's not acceptable. So you can make LEDs that are really high color rendering index, which is kind of a flawed metric, but that's another 2-hour discussion we don't need to have. But high, basically it gives you the ability to tell colors apart.
Because isn't that why they use the like more of the LEDs in the kitchen, so you can see water on the floor and stuff like that?
Yeah, so without getting too deep
into the brighter white,
you want to emulate a broad spectrum, meaning every color wavelength is represented. And if you just have blue, everything looks either blue or grayscale, because whatever object you're shining it on either absorbs blue or reflects it at a different rate. And so you basically get this grayscale of blue. If you do the same thing with red, everything will look different because different color objects absorb red at different rates than they absorb blue, but it's still grayscale. So to get something that's full color, you have to have all colors represented on some level. and you can vary the LED source itself to give you a different spectrum based on how good of color rendering you want and what color point you want it to be. So for bike lights, there's not been a big push to have high CRI, high color rendering index lights, because it generally requires a broader spectrum phosphor, which is less efficient. So if you want max lumen outputs, which has been the calling card for the bike industry forever, is how can we make it as bright as possible? Having high CRI hurts that mission. So you have to have less light output. It's less efficient for the benefit of better color rendering. And there's a balance.
What do you think the reason is that they're doing that? Like, is it just for the marketing fucking number to say you have the biggest number, or is it people that are getting into this light business that maybe don't know the engineering side well enough, or something, like how light really works? Or
it's a little of both. It's because people in general don't understand how light works on a level that they can make that kind of decision. They don't know what CRI means, and they don't know the difference between good color rendering and bad color rendering. They just say, oh, that's an LED because I can't see the colors. Like, well, no, LEDs can do whatever you want them to do. We just only made them that way for this product because that's the only thing the industry demanded. Nobody was saying, hey, I need a bike light where I can see colors better. And so everyone in the industry is now racing to put out the most lumens possible. So, and that gets you into the one-upsmanship of, are just going to put a bigger number on the side of their light every year, and that's your upgrade. We're not going to do that because that's not what we're trying to do. But this,
there's a certain point where I don't feel like you're getting any benefit out of more lumens.
You're not, because your eyes respond to that, because you have pupils, and your pupils, if you go out in the bright sunlight, your pupils will contract, and that's because it's letting less light into your eyes to protect your eyes. If you're in the dark after a while, or you're really high or something, your pupils will dilate and they'll get really big. And the reason they do that when it's dark is because they're trying to open up as wide as possible, let as much light in as possible so that you can see better at dark. And that's dark adaptation. What happens is that your eyes take 15 or 20 minutes to fully adjust to darkness where it's as bright as it's going to be, but it takes fractions of a second for them to constrict to protect your eyes from damage. So when you go out in the bright sunlight or you flash yourself with light, it takes a while for your vision to come back. But if a bright light is on and the light goes off, you can't immediately see in the dark. It takes time. So that's why we're trying to design our lights to reduce hot spots. So particularly for handlebar lights, because if you turn your bars off to the side a little bit to counter steer into a corner, they might be shooting directly at some foliage just off the side of the trail, which is going to flash back at you really bright, and your eyes are going to respond to that, and it's going to take time for your pupils to then dilate more to let more light in. So if you have enormous amounts of light, what happens is your eyes adjust to that. So there's definitely limitations where at lower light levels your eye can't adjust any further because your pupils can only dilate but so much. But there's a limit, and that's why cars are limited to around 2,000 lumens, because that's enough to see at night. And
I was gonna say when I upgraded to having an 1,800 lumen light, that was pretty much where I felt like it was the sweet spot, and because if you have 1,800 on your head and you have 1,800 on your handlebars, you still have 1,800 lumens of light. It's not like you get 3,600, right?
Well, you do, but your eye doesn't perceive it as that. So there's a difference between actual brightness and perceived brightness, because your eyes have this chemical response. There's chemical receptors in the back of your eyes that are responding to saturation from photons hitting them at certain wavelengths. And when your eyes are too saturated, then basically starts to get dim. That's why if you stare at a bright light and you look away from it, you get that ghost of it.
Halo.
That's where your chemical receptors are oversaturated, and it takes them time to kind of come back down to earth.
The
same thing happens with any color of light, any beam pattern, but the more intense it is, the more severe that effect is. So I think that you can double your light output, but it's not perceived as doubled light output. So you really have to have, if you have an 1,800 lumen light, you really need to have 7,200 lumens for it to feel twice as bright to your eyes. And it's
that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
It's hard to educate, or rather it's hard to market that way, because I don't want to say, hey, our light's not as bright, but it'll feel brighter because of this. It's like, yeah, the car has half the horsepower, but it'll feel faster. Like that only works if you get to drive the car and experience it. And so,
so what I was going to say is, like, right around that point is whenever I felt like this is bright enough for how I'm riding, and it's definitely not like holding me back any. And I didn't feel like whenever I saw my friends that had more lumens, like it really just seemed like their pattern was wider. Like they were brighting, like white, like getting wider on the trail. But where, like, let's say when I first started night riding, I think the brightest lights we could buy were like 600 lumens. So to have like a 600 on your head and a 600 on your bar, you were like, I definitely would feel like going down the trail that I was out, like, quotes here for people that are listening, air quotes, like outrunning my light. You know what I mean? Like where it would be like, it was not bright enough that I could see far enough into the trail that I would be setting myself up for the speed that I wanted to go, you know?
Right.
But at 1,800 lumens, I definitely feel like, no, you're good, you know?
Yeah. And that, it all comes back down to the beam pattern, how the light is actually spread onto the trail.
And maybe I was getting lucky with what I bought, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and you haven't tried ours yet, right? So
yeah, no, I'm definitely interested. So that's so you were talking earlier about the different colors and how the LEDs can like affect things and whatnot. You have a package that you have a headlamp and a handlebar lamp.
Yeah.
When you design that as a package, do you have different lights in the handlebar one than you do in the head one because you're trying to like make that mesh proper that you were talking about? Or
yeah, so there's a couple of things going on in terms of color and the spectrum of the light. We keep that constant between the two lights because we don't want it to be like a blue light and a yellow light having the mesh together, because that definitely lets you see beam artifacts and you get distracted by those bouncing around the trail rather than just focusing on the trail.
What's a beam artifact? It sounds like something when you like took too much acid or something.
Yeah, so like if you walk out in direct sunlight, there's no artifact. It's super even. Everything is getting the same intensity of sunlight on the ground.
Okay,
when you have a flashlight, you have typically carry around a flashlight. You have a spot that the light is being focused on. Beam artifacts are basically things that you notice that are either not intentional or distracting in that pattern. So if you have a spot and there's this little like flint off in the corner that's not intended to be there, but it's like reflecting off of something.
Yeah, something.
Planes, like
you're like, what is that over there? Yeah, I got it. There's a little crack in the flashlight lens, and it's shooting a little light over there, and you're like, you're sidetracked by it. I get what you're saying.
Yep. Or even just the edge of the beam pattern. So if you have a typical flashlight, and a lot of bike lights are this way because they're just flashlight optics. They have a circular spot beam pattern, or there's the hot spot where all the light is mainly concentrated, and they have the spill that's generally unfocused light just coming out without getting collimated into that hot spot. And then you have a cutoff edge where basically there's no light outside of that. And each of those interfaces, those edges, can be very harsh to the eye. And when you move the light around, you notice those. And that can be distracting on the trail. So what we're trying to do is, rather than pump out as much light as possible into this one spot right in the middle of the trail, we're trying to make it look more like it does during the daytime. And the way we do that is by balancing the handlebar beam with the helmet beam for those specific mounting locations, where we want the handlebar light to be super wide, very even beam pattern for a number of reasons. One, your handlebars are never pointing exactly where you want them to point. So you need to point the bars where you need to go, not necessarily where you need to be looking. And so
100%.
If you have a narrow beam on the bars, you turn your bars just a few degrees and you lose the trail.
I definitely always am looking for a wide beam pattern for what I put on my handlebars. Exactly what you're saying, because you just want to light up everything.
Right.
You know, and you don't really care about the spot. The spot is like, that's where your head is. That's where you're like,
Right. And so if you have a narrow spot on your helmet, that's great because that you can direct exactly where it's going. So you can place that light exactly where you need it in your field of view to fill in gaps that the handlebar light isn't filling. And because of that, you're a narrower beam. That means you're covering less area, so you can use less total light output, less power, which means a smaller battery, which means a lighter weight pack, which is much better because it's on your head, which means feel it on your helmet. You can feel strain on your neck on longer rides. Then you want to reduce that. Well, it's a good thing that we actually want the handlebar light to do the heavy lifting because you're not going to notice the weight on your bars nearly as much as it is when it's on your neck. So by having a wider light on the bars, not only are you eliminating those hot spots so that when you turn your bars, you don't get the flash off the foliage on the side of the trail. You don't lose the trail because your hot spot has now left the building. And because of that, you're covering a larger area, which means you need more light to get it up to the same intensity level. So you need a larger battery in order to have similar run times, which means a heavier light. And it makes more sense for that to be on the bike anyways. But we want the handlebar light to do the heavy lifting because of what we just talked about earlier with the depth of field, where you can get these shadows cast from the bars so that a trail looks rocky and chunky. It doesn't look flat because if you can't see those shadows, you might come into a rock on the trail that you're reading, you're trying to see and process the trail at speed. You might read that as flat accidentally. And so you might be too far forward over the bars. And now that rock takes the bike out from underneath you and you're off balance coming into the next thing. It's amazing how much little stuff like that matters. And that's why the periphery also matters. We want good peripheral vision because during the day, it's not just the trail you see everything.
All this other stuff. Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like it should matter until you try riding at night with a light that actually covers basically everything from your handlebars forward. And it helps with balance. It helps you not get surprised by stuff coming out around corners.
I definitely, like I said, I said it earlier in our conversation, like the night riding to me, like I would learn to ride looser because of, kind of some of those inconsistencies with the lights and the rocks, basically. Like you're coming up on stuff and you just have to ride looser because you don't know, maybe like your brain's telling you, oh, that rock's not sticking out of the ground that far. And then when you hit it, you're like, yeah, it was.
Right. Because you're not just seeing, all right, there's this one rock coming up. I know what to do for it. I'm going to be prepared. It's like there's a lot of them constantly on the trail, unless you're riding just super buff single track. And like I got a buddy back in North Carolina that he likes his bikes to be, toothbrush cleaned, very specific way. Like he doesn't have anything superfluous, no bottle cages or anything.
Yeah.
And so he just basically only rides with helmet light because he refuses to mount anything to his bike.
Oh, there you go.
He's willing to try it now that I'm part of Outbound. He's willing to actually try our handlebar lights. But what I basically been telling him for a while is like, that's fine. That's your personal preference. And you can ride with that just fine. But you will never be able to read the trail at night with just a helmet light as well as you can during the day because you get no depth of field because of the physical of your lights.
So there was a guy on YouTube, I can't remember who it was, that I was watching a while ago, and he was saying, I don't remember which way he said, but I think he said the opposite of what I do. And he was saying that it was better to have the brighter light on your handlebars than it was on your head. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, that's really surprising to me because a lot of times my handlebar light, unless I'm like, bombing, and at that point I just turn everything up as bright as I can.
Yeah.
But even then, they're both those lights are the same lumen output. And but typically I would be running my handlebar light low. Let's just say, like, I don't know, if it's low end would be, maybe I'd be running it on medium. So it's at like 800-900 lumens or something like that. And then my head would be at, 12 or 1500 or something like that. And that's normally where I would ride at with the brighter light on my head. But you kind of, I saw you shake your head yes whenever the brighter light should be on the bottom. So can you explain to me why and why I've been doing it wrong?
Well, and this is the thing. I don't want to say that anybody's doing it wrong, but here's why we do it the way that we do right now. And for the record, we're going to make we're making new products all the time, and it's hard. That's a whole other discussion about supply chain in the industry. But we're making new products, and we're going to make some more powerful helmet lights for people who prefer to ride that way. But the way we have our Evo DH package set up right now is we have about 2,000 lumens on the bars and about 850 on the helmet. And the reason we have that balance that way is because one, runtime. We want the runtime to be fairly balanced between the two because you're going to be using both for the ride. And we, like I mentioned moments ago, with a narrower beam and less, you can use less light output, which lets you use less power. So we don't need 2,000 lumens on the helmet in order to give us the visibility we need to be even. If we put 2,000 lumens on the helmet and on the bar with a narrow beam pattern on the helmet, basically that helmet is going to wash out everything else in the frame. And that kind of negates a lot of the benefit of your handlebar light. So you don't want your helmet light to overpower that beam pattern. You still want the benefits of both. So we basically made the helmet still have peripheral spill and scatter, but definitely a more defined spot with a very smooth taper off, so that you can direct that. Say you don't want to outrun your lights, right? The handlebar by itself, there's a speed limit. Like you can outrun them at a certain point because it's very wide and even. And on the helmet, we use that to fill in that gap, so that if you're going 30 miles an hour down a straightaway, the handlebar light gives you your periphery and right in front of you, and your helmet light is focused down the trail so you can see the run out.
Maybe it's how I would set my lights, because I would usually, my handlebar light, I would kind of point it down more so that it wasn't like pointing straight out, so I would be pointing it kind of like just at a little bit of an angle down, so that it was shining more onto the ground than my head. And then I would use my head to be able to like really look up and down the trail or around the corners and stuff like that. And I guess that's maybe why I don't know, I did it that way. But I also, my headlamp, I'm using a battery pack that's just, wired through my helmet and down my shirt and whatever,
Sure. Well, and we felt like there was a sweet spot, like you're talking about, around 1,500 lumens. Like that's why we're shooting for around 2,000 on the bars, because we feel like that's a pretty good sweet spot for the overwhelming majority of riders. Now, it doesn't say it's best for everybody, but we're not going to make an 8,000 lumen light unless it's just for fun,
right?
Like, to tick a box. Like if there's an 8,000 lumen light on the market right now, so we might make an 8,001 lumen light. The SRAM Shimano battle, but it's not a product that we'd use. Going brighter than that doesn't give you a really tangible benefit versus the extra weight and everything you have to add to keep up with the runtime, the extra thermals, because if you have that much light, it's going to overheat a lot faster, and that means it's going to have to dial the power back. So you're not actually getting that output the whole time. That's a whole thing of worms. But I think for us, the way we're designing our lights currently is we want you to be able to perceive the trail as realistic as possible. And to do that, you have to have more power on the bars so you can get the depth of field, and then helmet light cannot overpower that. But we want that to basically, the helmet light is basically just filling in gaps. So down trail at speed, around corners, weird features, when you're going over rollers and stuff and you want to look down over something, that's where the helmet light is for. And the handlebar light basically does everything. So for the most part, me personally, I'll just ride with our Evo on the bars for most of my like casual rides. I'll just have the one light. I'll have the helmet light, but a lot of times I don't even turn it on because it's fine for the type of riding I'm doing.
And what I'll do is I usually turn my helmet off if I'm climbing, and I'll just keep my handlebars on low, just because I'm trying to like, and let me preface this, like when I'm going on night rides, like it's like a lot of times they're like, we're starting in the dark. So it's not like, hey, we started out and then it got dark and then we finished the last hour. It's like we're going out on a ride that I know is going to take 3 hours or maybe even a little bit more. And you're like trying to make sure that your lights work that whole time, right? So you're like, hey, I'm climbing, I'm going to turn my headlight off, or I'm going to turn my bars down to as low as they go, or hey, we're on a road right now, I'm going to turn everything off, because I can't freaking screw this up and the moon's out, so like,
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of people don't do. They don't think about that sort of thing when they're riding. They just turn their light on and go ride, and they don't touch it again. So we actually baked that into our user interface too, because there's different types of riders, and there's a lot of times, like on a pedally loop, you don't want to constantly futzing with the light output, and you're just kind of pedaling the whole time. So it's up and down. You don't have a long climb. It's a slow speed. So you turn it on, you let it go. We have an adaptive mode for that basically starts at high output, at max output, and then slowly tapers as your eyes adjust to the darkness. So you don't notice the taper off, and then just kind of very slowly, maintains for the rest of the ride.
Wow.
That gives you additional run time for the set it and forget it type of ride. Just hammering. But then for like group rides, and I imagine what a lot of your types of rides are, is more enduro style where, shit goes wrong. People are maintaining, fixing something on the trail side, or you stop for a beer, or you've got a 30-minute climb where you don't need 4,000 lumens. So you put your lights low, you just traipse up there, you save all this battery life, and then when you get to the top, you put it on max. And so we have an adaptive and a high mode. They're different because the adaptive will taper the output as it goes. The high is going to be 100% output no matter what, so it does not trail off. And this is something that there's not really any lights that do this currently, because they want to say, oh, it's 1,000 lumens for 2 hours. Well, yeah, it starts at 1,000, but 1 hour in, you're at 500 lumens because it's just tapering the output as the battery dies. We want you to be able to go for a ride, and after 2 hours of pedaling up the mountain, you've got your descent at the end. We want you to turn it on high and actually get max output, not 40% or whatever's left, right? So we keep those as different modes, but then we have high and low so that you have the slow climb, fast descent, and you can control that and maximize your ride time. So you can get a ton more ride time if you just turn your lights down on climbs,
Yeah, it's interesting. And, I didn't really think about that, like how different it is geographically. Like if I was riding in Sedona, my lights would probably be bright almost all the time because it's like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, where like here, Northern California is probably a lot, but I don't think we told people that you're up in, no, you mentioned PNW at the beginning. Yeah. Like we have long climbs and long descents, and if there's some trail systems, that are up, down, but like most of what we do is like climb for an hour and then descend for 15 minutes or whatever, it's a lot of that. So the way that I would utilize my light is definitely different than somebody that's in a place like even the Midwest or like Texas, where there's not a whole lot of elevation gain and loss in their trail. So they're probably more consistent on where they keep their light, where with me, it's like bright as hell or not really at all,
Yeah. And, I grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina, in the Piedmont of the state, and like our local trails, the max elevation change from the bottom to the top is like 200 feet. So the hotly contested New Light downhill after the big switch is like a 24-second downhill that is the best downhill in town, when we go for rides out there, we don't really mess with our lights much because it's constantly up and down. But here, every trail that I go on, it's like 1,000-foot climb and 1,000-foot descent. There's not really a lot of in between. And even the types of trails, like, I was living in the desert in Phoenix just before I moved up here recently.
So you rode Somo a lot and stuff like that. Super fun over there.
Yeah, and the McDowell's actually super. Give a little shout out to the Mcdowell Mountains right near South Mountain. That is.
I have to get over there. I've only ridden South Mountain every time I've been there. So.
Well, South Mountain's iconic, and it's just such good riding. It just also gets super crowded, and we lived near the McDowells. The McDowells have lots of large, sharp, loose rocks. It just eats wheels. So it's a totally different type of terrain from South Mountain, where you got a little more like rounded slab rock and kind of climb moves. This is more just like fields of rocks trying to destroy you. And I love that. So for there, like, handlebar light, absolutely essential. Otherwise, the trail looks flat, and it is very much not. It's hard to ride. But I come out here, and in Pacific Northwest, we got trails here that are actually built for mountain bikes. Holy crap! there's some trails that are smooth and buff, and they have berms that are sculpted, and your needs in terms of lighting change based on the terrain. The best example I can think of this was in Bentonville. We were out at Bentonville Bike Fest recently, and they've got some, they're Walmart. They got a couple guys, Walton Brothers, that are just dumping money into that area.
Yeah, they're building all kinds of shit over there.
Yeah, and you can tell because the trails are all meticulously built and maintained, and there's even parts of them like the Glow Trail that's actually paved for a portion of it, but it's basically just a roller coaster for bikes. There's some trails there that are like several mile long pump tracks, essentially, where you're just constantly up, down, up, down, up, down, pumping your bike. And it was the only time I had been night riding where I thought, I don't even want my bar light right now. I only want my helmet light, because the trail was smooth. There was no rocks sticking up out of anywhere.
It doesn't even matter then.
Up and down, your bike is pitching up and down constantly, but your head is staying level. So your helmet gives you the best visibility on that trail. There's just not a lot of places that are like that, though. It's special terrain versus most single track. Handlebar light is going to be a much bigger benefit than a helmet light by itself. But
right.
terrain matters.
Do you see, like, I don't know, like if I'm tapping into the crystal ball correctly, but do you see like the future of lights where they're maybe kind of looking, so to speak, to like decide what kind of light output they should put based on what kind of reflection they're getting off of? Like if I rode in Tahoe, it's granite and white and like more reflective than if I was to ride in, like, let's say up where you're at, where it's the ground's pretty dark and the trees, or like even Santa Cruz, like here and still in Northern California, where it's like the lighting would be totally like maybe a different shade of light would be more suited for that type of trail than it would be up there.
It's a very good question. So there's two things. In terms of like adaptive lighting, where you can vary the light output based on what it sees, so you reduce these high intensity flashes off of objects and things like that. That's something that the automotive industry is working on for car headlights. They exist in the world. The U.S. does not allow them, and they're really damn hard to manufacture. We worked on some stuff like that my previous career, and it is incredibly expensive and complex, and I don't think we'll ever see anything like that in the bike light industry. For road, maybe with kind of like adaptive high beams kind of thing, but even that I don't think has a whole lot of. I think it's basically being too clever by half. I think it's overcomplicating a fairly simple thing for biking. Not saying that we couldn't benefit from it, but I think because you're not in a vehicle that's generating its own power and has all this additional cost baked in, so you can kind of support this. It just, a lot of those high tech features are not really going to transfer well to this industry. So I don't think we'll see much like that. But in terms of like color quality and different spectrums for different types of terrain, that's a question I get a lot from moto people because, and I don't know if that's the right term.
That sounds good to me.
People who ride motos and do off-roading, particularly for off-roading, amber lights are really popular, and having amber filters. The idea being that it helps you cut through dust, so you don't get as much glare off dust, kind of like fog lights. And that's a whole other conversation. But essentially, I don't really buy into a lot of that having enough benefit to be worth doing for specific riding areas. We got to do some experimentation with that. And in fact, I don't have them right next to me, but I've got, a bunch of lights where I've got, 4 different samples with different color points from warm to cool and different color rendering indexes. So I can ride with them and see what feels best on the trail and what helps in different terrains. Because if you've got a desert environment where it's basically just shades of brown, or PNW where it's darker browns and bright greens, or this like granite or slate where it's like more shinier gray or like bright surfaces. It's all different, but I don't think that any one spectrum of light is going to really help with any of those. I think it's more going to be about metering your output and changing your beam pattern for the type of trail you're riding. And that's where we may see more, beam pattern options in the future, or more like adaptable convertible lights. But honestly, we're still ways away from that, because we at Outbound are basically the only company putting in effort on optical design right now to make something that's truly optimized for bicycling. There's some companies that have, they put in like a modicum of effort to make it not a flashlight, but it's not, like Light in Motion. They've got some optics they've built from scratch for over the years, and their Sika in particular, that are not terrible, but they're good for certain applications, and that's their attempt. And there's other companies that don't make any attempt whatsoever. They just grab off the shelf optics because they don't have an optical engineer in house and they don't want to pay for it. But I think we'll start seeing more, because we're, kind of like the bike industry. We get to a point where it's saturated with a bunch of good products, and in order to differentiate, you have to actually be better and do something different. Yeah. And I think there's only but so many ways to go without adding in a bunch of bells and whistles that have arguably little benefit to the riding, versus custom optics and beam pattern that have a direct, immediate impact on what you're seeing and how you see it.
Yeah. So, I think for me, for like lights, like when I'm looking at them, obviously I'll look at the lumen, but one of the first things I'm looking at is like, how long does the battery last? Yeah. At what rate? And then that's really what's deciding what I'm buying. And it's like, because I don't know, at least what I've found is like, it seems like the rides that I'm going on are longer than what maybe some of the lights are intended for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that all comes back down to use case, right? That forces you to be one that kind of meters your output. You pay attention to it, because if you didn't pay attention, you wouldn't make it through the ride.
Right.
Oddly enough, I think that the e-bike market is actually kind of helping educate consumers on this a little, because they're starting to look at range and realize that, if I outrun my range, I'm gonna have to pedal this heavy ass bike back with no assist. That's gonna suck.
Right.
And so that kind of helps people relate to, lights are kind of the same thing. You have a battery, you have a certain amount of power, and you can't regenerate it on the trail. And so our approach to that is kind of taking, because we fucking hate wires. Wires are dumb. I hate being like having my head tethered to some other part of my body.
Yeah, no, it sucks, especially when a branch catches it.
Yes. So we are going full wireless for all of our lights from here going forward. The way we're addressing your concern about runtime is by having pass-through charging, because they're all USB-C rechargeable, but we want to be able to charge them while we're riding, so that you can extend your runtime pretty significally if you want it, by plugging it in. But if you don't need it, you're just going for an after-work spin, or like a lot of people do rides where it's like at dusk and they're going to finish in the dark. They don't need the runtime, so they don't want the wires. They want the lightest weight, simplest thing they can just slap on and go. So 100%. We're trying to be able to do both, which is something that a lot of companies don't offer. They either have a wired battery pack where you're stuck with it, or they have USB charging where there's no way to charge it while you're riding. So there's no.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally know what you're saying. I can agree with you there. That's actually that's pretty cool, because my fix in that situation would be like, if you're running the USB light because you want it light on your head, like then I guess you just carry an extra one in your bag. You know what I mean? Like that would be the way to do it. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. Like that would be nice that you could, hey, I know the first 45 minutes or whatever we're gonna be climbing, I could have this wire hooked up and it's pulling off of a battery pack, let's just say, in my backpack or my pocket or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Then later
unplug.
I'm like, all right, unplug it, let's jam, and then I don't feel like I got something pulling me or whatever.
And it's something that I think, I know some people that carry spare lights because, like the Industry 9 crew back in Asheville, North Carolina, they love night riding. They have these epic Tuesday night supper club rides where it's usually a big shuttle even with the shuttle, it's still 2,000-3,000 feet of climbing.
Yeah.
Hours. And
yeah,
a lot of them bring extra lights because there's attrition. When you have a large group, things break and people rip their helmet lights off on branches and stuff.
Right.
And, stuff happens. So they just carry extras. But a lot of people don't want to pay the money for one light, much less multiple lights.
Yeah.
So we figure that if you can have a standard like USB power bank that you'd use to charge your phone, those are a lot cheaper, a lot more ubiquitous now. You can carry one of those and have that as your backup. That's less expensive and more versatile, and then just have the light. So we're trying to make it simpler, right? We're not trying to.
That makes a lot of sense. I really like that
types
approach.
Of light. Yeah.
I will say this: the one thing that I hate about every light that I've owned is I would love whatever I have on my head to like make a beep when I have like 3 minutes left or something like that. Like give me an audible noise, like a light changing to a red blinky light that's on top of my head.
Doesn't help much, right?
What does that do? That doesn't do anything, Like,
well, and actually, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it through here, but yeah, I probably can't hear that. But this is a light that we were messing around with stuff like that. So I put a little cell phone vibrator motor in here. So when you change modes, you can feel it vibrating.
Yeah. I got that.
Yeah, so it basically can give you different like vibration through your helmet, so you can get a tactile.
Right, you would feel that. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And we were playing around with that because I thought it was a cool idea, and my buddy who's helping me with stuff just really wanted to build one. So we did this and basically tried to figure out how much vibration you needed in order to actually feel it on the trail and discern it from everything else. And it's a lot. It takes a lot to get through the helmet into your body. So anyways, the point is,
especially while your freaking Indians are pounding on your eardrums because you're trying to go up some stupid hill and you're
we're messing around with stuff like that. Audible is a very simple way to do it, but we have some other solutions in the future that we're playing around with as well, because any indicator that's on your helmet is effectively useless.
Yeah, I don't even understand why they waste the time. Like, I don't really care. Like, I mean, yeah, if that light is on my handlebars and it starts blinking red, okay, that makes sense. But if it's on my head, this is pointless. Like, why are you even wasting the energy to turn that light red? Like, give me another 3 seconds of light, please.
Like we need to have a mode that you can enable that just disables any indicators like that.
Right. But in my head, like, I do IT as my day job, and it's like the little tiny speaker that's on a motherboard that gives you like the BIOS chirps is like, it's so small. And it just does one tone. And that's really all I need is just like, beep. I'm like, oh shit, you got 3 minutes left, dude. Like, figure out what you're doing right now. Like.
Yeah. And it all just comes back down to cost and complexity, right? On some level, trying to make it hit certain cost targets. And so we don't want to add features that don't connect to the majority of users.
Right.
We get a lot of weird fucking requests for really stupid stuff all the time. I mean, it's great. We love the customer feedback. Thank you for the questions.
I can only imagine.
There's a lot of unique requests that we would never do because it would add several dollars to every light, and 99% of users would never
use it. Yeah.
But we're definitely going to solve that problem of battery indication on the helmet without taking it off your head. We have another way that we're working on first that we'll talk about again in the future, but it's I don't know.
I mean, I can think of other things. I mean, it's like obviously like a Bluetooth, something that you put on your handlebars or something like that gives you optics down there or whatever. But yeah, there's definitely ways to do it. And I think that at the end of the day is what I'm getting at is definitely give me a notification that I can actually like see or use, like let's say the Night Rider light that I have okay, I got the battery pack, and I'm using that big, huge battery pack because I want this thing to last at, neutron star level for as long as possible, right? But that, once again, has a light that's on the battery. It's like the battery's in my pocket, or it's in my bag, or it's in my fanny pack. Like, that doesn't help. And that light also has lights on the light itself. And it's like, well, hey man, can you do me a favor? How many blinky lights do I got right now?
Right.
Like,
right. And the thing is with like those in particular too, like that indicator on the battery it's not useful. It basically tells you if you're good when you know you're good, or if you're screwed. And by that point, there's nothing you can do about it. There's no like, oh, I'm at about half battery. It's either you're not screwed or you're screwed. And it's
I never understood why it didn't go to like. And the other thing too is like it'll usually go from like working, and this is not just their light, but any other lights too. Like it'll go from working to I'm dead. And there's like, and in my mind, that's a software thing. And I feel like that when you're writing the software for the light, you should be able to say, hey, this guy's got 5 minutes of this light left. And now I'm going to change it from 800 lumens down to 250. So he has enough light to walk out with for the next hour. Like, why give me the other 5 minutes when I'm not going to finish my ride, or like, give me the option to override it, like, nope, give me the 5 minutes, but I would prefer that when it gets to the point of I'm about to die, like knock me down some levels. And then mentally I'm like, oh shit, light just dimmed. I'm going to either have to hammer or this is what I'm dealing with, know?
Exactly. So, and that's exactly what we do. We basically let you do whatever you want until the battery gets to 5% capacity left. At that point, whatever mode you're in, it trips down to low output. Yeah. So that you can see that change. It's a hard step change, and that's on purpose so that you notice it and realize, oh, it's now in get out of the woods mode. And at least 20 minutes of light output to get out of the woods on low. So it's not best if you're like right in the middle of the downhill, but you at least still have light and okay, I got to turn back now and not just be completely dead. Right. Yeah, I never understood that. Like,
it's definitely. I mean, I was joking around about it earlier, but I mean, when you go from having light to no light in the woods, it is. I mean, because your eyes are not adjusting that quickly. So like instantly it's like, I'm in a black bag right now.
You are holding on for dear life. Yes.
All I know is what I saw before that turned off. And I remember rocks and a cliff. And now I'm just jamming the shit out of my brakes and hoping that I'm not dying, like,
man. Well, and that's also why, because I had a bunch of buddies that had cheaper lights and they would die in the middle of downhills at high speed, go from full blast to completely off. And they would crash because of it. So we put a 10-second long up-down strobing function. So it doesn't turn completely off. And it's kind of a slow, half hertz strobe. So that it goes from like max output back down to low so that it's telling you, hey, you need to slow down and get off your bike because the light's going to die and we can't.
Oh, that's awesome too. So even at the last like couple of seconds, then you at least get another warning too, instead of like straight hard off.
Yeah, you get 10 seconds, which is plenty of time to come
to hit the brakes.
Yeah, and figure out where your cell phone is so you can turn the light on and maybe
what you're doing. Right.
But like that to us is like that's a safety thing. Like same reason that cranks and handlebars get tested with certain standards for strength so they don't just fail and cause crashes that could injure somebody. You can get injured if your light just fails. And so we want warnings like that from a safety standpoint for the riders, whether we're reliable or not, just because that's what we want when we're riding.
Yeah. I think it's definitely night riding is so much fun. And there's like so many good times that I've had. It's like to try to explain it to somebody that's never done it. The way I always am just telling them, like, you just have to go do it. You have to go try it. I mean, there's this trail where we're right by me that's like kind of a real flowy downhill roller coaster. And the first time that I was going down that trail at night, and there's like 3 bats like flying down the trail like with me, like it was just so cool because it's like for them the light's attracting the bugs and they're like, you know, fucking dinner or something, you know. But it's just like, you know, you're jamming down this trail and it's like you got these bats like right in front of you and you're just like, oh wow, this is sick, you know. And I don't know, those are really fun experiences, you know.
Well, I just had this conversation with somebody the other day about spiders because 'tis the season right now. There's spider webs across the trails, and whoever's in front is clearing them.
Yeah.
Unless you're tall like me, and then I get all of them in the face no matter what. But
no matter what, yeah.
But so it's certain areas, and middle of North Carolina and all of North Carolina in the woods is ripe for this. But depending on where these creatures exist, if you're just using a helmet light, you turn your bar lights off and you just look around with your helmet light, you'll see a bunch of reflections, little like sparkly bits in the leaves and in the trees and stuff. And if you actually go look closely, you realize that most of them are spider eyes, because the eyes are these spherical orbs that are retroreflective. And so if you have a light very close to your eyeballs pointing at something, it'll shoot back and reflect straight back at you. So you'll see the reflection of the eyes of all these spiders, and you realize they're everywhere.
Oh, that's creepy. That's super creepy.
I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like dew, you know, a little bit of like moisture on the leaves or whatever. And then I realized, no, it's bone dry out here. What is this? And somebody said, oh yeah, those are spiders. Like, oh, cool.
Interesting. Yeah. That's definitely interesting. I'll tell you another thing is, have you ever heard a turkey gobble like right next to you?
I don't think I have. No.
They are really loud, like really, really loud. Louder than you would expect them to be, right? So I was on this night ride, and apparently they like to get up in trees at night. And I'm on this night ride, man, and there's like going under this limb is probably a foot above my head, and this turkey let out this freaking gobble, man. I'm telling you, I about sucked my bike up my butthole, dude. I just scared the living shit out of me, man. Like, there's definitely something to say about night riding and the noises that you hear, but when something's like that audible, like right on top of you, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, that's not something that happens every ride, though, right? You're not.
No, definitely not. Yeah, that was once in probably the last, I don't know, 10 years or so of riding at night, but
it's pretty awesome.
Good stuff.
It's a memorable experience, right?
Right.
Like, you know, I say this to a lot of people. There's nobody tells stories about the nights where they got plenty of sleep. It's just not an interesting thing. You do it 1,000 times, it's
right.
It's just another night. But if you go out on a ride like that and you nearly get death from above from a like, that's gonna stick in your mind. And
right.
Like, so I was on a ride a few years ago in Phoenix before I moved out there. A couple of buddies of mine went out there in January, right after New Year's. We did a night ride on the Black Canyon Trail, BCT, big, epic point-to-point thing. And you're out behind this mountain ridge off the highway, so you're middle of nowhere. You can't see any lights or anything. And we had planned to finish this ride during the daytime. Of course, we didn't. And being the light guy, even at the time, I was the only one with a light, and I had a flashlight, but no one else had lights. And we realized at a certain point, it's a full moon. We could try riding without, and we don't have a choice now because we got to get out of here, and it's point to point, so there's no way to bail. So we're riding by moonlight in the middle of the desert. And so if I turn my flashlight on at all, it destroys everyone's night vision.
Right.
Your eyes adjust to that, and it takes another 10 minutes to get back down.
Yeah.
So I basically don't turn it on at all, and we're riding in total darkness for a while, just the half lux of moonlight. And that's quite an experience first and foremost. But the thing I remember most from that ride is that we had a buddy had his trail dog with us, and at some point the dog just started barking incessantly and just wouldn't stop. We're trying to like keep going down the trail, and I'm like, dog, come on. And so I'm at the back of the group, and I got my flashlight out and I shine the light on him to figure out what's going on. And there was this longhorn bull, like just big cow, sitting on the side of the trail, just laying down, just staring at this dog. This dog is, 2 feet in front of the owner, just barking in its face. And it's just sitting there staring at it. And this thing's, like 1,000 pounds. It's this massive creature right off the trail. Like it was probably 10 feet from me. And I had no idea until I had passed it. And it's like, hey guys, we got to get the leash and we got to get out here. We got to go.
Yeah.
Things you'd never see that during the day because they wouldn't be out there, and the trails are totally different at night. And that's where I think it is what you make of it, right? Some people like that experience more than anything. They're not just trying to tack one on after work when it's dark in the winter. They want to go have the experience of going out, turning all the lights off, and being immersed in darkness with no sound except for trees. It's like, it's really cool, and you just don't understand it until you've done it. So
and somehow a freaking chipmunk running through the woods sounds like a Sasquatch.
Oh man, or in the desert you see one snake and now everything looks like a snake.
Yeah. I have that same problem in the daytime, especially this time of year around here. It's like I've seen more snakes this year than I have any year. And because of that, like I think I've seen like 4 or 5 snakes already this year. So my brain is like stuck on snake mode, like all the time. Like even like some twig that's hanging up here, like eye level, which would make no sense for a snake to be floating through the air. My brain's still like, is that a snake?
Death from above.
Yeah. So you said you worked for like a optic company in the past. Like, how do you get into optics? Like you're in high school one day and you're like, I want to do lights.
Yeah. So actually, I don't know how. So Matt, the founder of the company, co-owner, he's an optical engineer. That's his job, and I can't remember how he got into that. I know he worked for Boeing for a little while and did some non-optical things, but as a general, kind of mechanical engineering position, and then got into optics. I think from there, but he had some otherwise training. And Matt, I'm sure he's going to listen to this and.
You're like, that's not what I did.
Me on what to say next time somebody asks. Right. But for me, I worked at Cree, which is the manufacturer of the LEDs themselves in Durham, North Carolina. And for that for me, it was I went to school for mechanical and electrical engineering, and I basically played with LEDs for fun. I just made stupid devices that lit up and did things, and that was a hobby. Because I was a nerd, and that's what I got my engineeringness out with, all that energy out with. And I took a job in water treatment out of college as a field engineer, and kind of got stuck in that job for several years for a bunch of other life reasons. And when I had a chance, I applied to Cree for almost a year. It's like 11 months before I finally got an interview. And it was one of the industry leaders in LEDs. It was near my hometown. It was right where I wanted to be. And I used all their products all the time, and I was buying them from a distributor in Australia because that was the only place I could get them in small quantities. So they were manufacturing them, shipping them to Australia, and then shipping back to me. It was so dumb. And I just really wanted to work there. So I eventually made it happen. That's a whole other long story. But I was hoping when I got there would be like all these other enthusiasts there with a bunch of crazy shit in their cubicles and things. Everybody's playing with stuff. No, there's a couple other people, and they're now very, very good friends of mine, even though I don't work there anymore. Because we like to make silly things with LEDs, and that's how we bonded. That's how I got into there, and that turned from wanting to just be the mad scientist in the corner, just doing the next generation R&D cool stuff. They quickly realized that actually wasn't my skill set. My skill set was kind of taking the bigger pieces of things and fitting them together. So they basically forced me to manage people, and I got into like chip design stuff. And then eventually they put me in applications engineering, which is essentially the bridge between actual use case for customers and R&D. So R&D isn't just trying to make the most efficient LED. The way they construct the LED is really critical to how they get used in optics for different applications. And the cost versus performance balance is critical for that, depending on the industry. And so we need that feedback from the end user, from the customer, to drive the R&D. not the other way around. We're not trying to force customers to use a product that's not ideal for them, right?
Right.
So when General Electric or Panasonic says we need this LED, you're like, okay, I guess we'll go figure out how to make that LED for you.
Right.
And I loved that because it gave me this kind of bridge between the intense R&D, the development side, and the actual end use case, how people were using the LEDs and what mattered in the real world.
So meanwhile, you're friends with, I think you said the founder his name's Matt.
Yep.
So meanwhile, all this is going on. You're just friends with Matt, and Matt's like starting this thing, or like he approached you when he wanted to start it.
I left Cree at some point because I wanted to make my own lights. I wanted to make my own company and make my own shit. And because I was a big mountain biker. So the two things I knew a lot about were bikes and LEDs. And
right on.
It just felt right for me to try to pull them together. Simultaneously, Matt was starting Outbound, and it was Kickstarter, and honestly, a lot of Kickstarters, I look at them and I don't give them a whole lot of credit until they get off the ground and survive for a little bit.
Right.
The Kickstarter curse, people can get caught up in that with these grandiose claims and never deliver on them. And so I saw him, but I was kind of like waiting to see where he was going and if he would survive. And thankfully, he kicked ass and stood this company up by himself and was doing everything from the design, the actual assembly of every single light, all the packaging, all the shipping, all the website, customer service. He was doing everything.
How did you know him? You guys went to college together or something, or?
No, basically the venture where I left Cree to pursue my own thing, making my own lights, that fell apart. I had a partnership. It fell apart 6 months into it for a number of different reasons. It ended up being good for both of us. And I was looking for a partner to make lights with, and I approached companies and that I thought, okay, you already make this stuff for the bike industry. You could add this to your product portfolio and fill it and be really cool and niche, and we could build off your brand. It's kind of this perfect fit. And basically a lot of the people I talked to are like, well, we kind of only make stuff that we like to ride, and we basically switch to snow sports in the winter, so we don't make lights. Or we don't want to get into consumer electronics at all because of all the additional regulatory stuff on it. Sticking to mechanical things and whatever. And so I had just found Outbound, and I was tracking him for a while because he was the only bike light company. And there's a ton of little like garage startups and things out there that just don't survive or they kind of fizzle out. But he was the only one that was doing something novel with optical design. So he was making lights that spread the beam across the trail or the road for mounting on the bars, for mounting on the helmet, and doing it in a really sensible way based off of what he's learning from the automotive industry.
Right. Instead of just like being like, hey, I'm going to try to put a flashlight on a cool mounting device and call it a day.
Yeah, and exactly. And so I was already trying to do that. Like I had basically been modifying bike lights, modifying their optics with diffusive films to broaden the beam pattern side to side for handlebar lights, and some with downturn beams so we get less glare up and things like that. And I was kind of hacking it together, but I didn't have the raw optical design experience to go from scratch, design an optic, simulate it, and get it through tooling and manufacturing and have it be real. I was basically still off the shelf stuff and kind of hacking things together. And so
I get it.
I reached out to him and sent him a long email that was really, really long and detailed. I tend to be kind of long-winded. I don't know if you pick up on that after this talk, but
it works out for me, man. I'm doing a podcast, so I'm like, right on, dude. Keep talking.
So I sent him this long-ass email and basically said, look, you're doing the thing that I can't really do effectively myself, and I can come in and help with some industrial design, some of the electronic side and the industry side of things to help you make a better product for the industry. And what we realized, he sent me an email back that was even longer. So we kind of,
dude, this is awesome.
we clicked pretty quickly. And what we realized is we just had a lot of back and forth via email and Facebook Messenger of all places. And
was one of the messages like, did we just become best friends?
I'm sure that meme made its way across a couple of times.
Right.
But we basically realized that we had this really complementary skill set where the things that I wasn't good at, he really enjoyed doing. Like he's good with search engine optimization and our ad spend and things like that.
Yeah.
I am not. He is really, I pride myself on being a good mechanical designer. I model stuff in CAD and 3D all the time for personal projects and for work. He's better at it than I am. So he does the mechanical stuff and I do the electronics. And we can kind of bridge that together because he doesn't really know anything about electronics. And so we use our strengths and fill in all the areas that we really need in this. And we can kind of
100%,
basically be a two-man company. We're three people now, but as a two-person company for a bit, we could kind of cover all of our gaps, and I could help grow into the industry and work on the testing side, the product development side, and he can really start with the core products and do the raw design work and make it pretty and manufacturable. He's really good with the design for manufacturing stuff. So, reducing the number of steps, number of fasteners, the ergonomics, so that we can assemble something not only faster and more effectively, but so that the design is more robust and so it's more reliable on the field. It's easier to repair, that sort of thing. And so we just kind of work that together, but we're doing it all via email and Facebook Messenger. And the first time we hadn't even spoken on the phone, the first time we met or talked was when I flew to Chicago and helped assemble the first run of Hangover, our helmet light, because it's the first light we designed together. And I was basically doing that in my part-time as a side gig while I was doing some engineering work for another company. And kind of as a litmus test, see if we work well together and everything. So we worked together for 11 months without talking on the phone, without meeting in person. And then he picked me up from the airport and we introduced ourselves to each other.
That's funny.
I've seen him in person, I think 3, maybe 4 times now over the past couple of years. And we've talked on the phone less than that. But we talk every day, constantly on Facebook Messenger about any number of things. And it works because we're basically set up now where he has a warehouse space in Chicago. We're actually just expanding now into a 7,000 square foot facility, kind of planning for expansion.
That's a lot of space.
We're not going to need all of it right now, but
I was going to say, you put a lot of lights in 7,000 square feet, man.
Yeah. Well, we're also doing all the assembly in-house. We have to stack all of the parts to actually do the assembly. Then we have to have an area for the assembly. Then we have quality control checks. Then we have packaging and shipping. And so all of that with space for us to actually like be there comfortably.
Totally.
It fills up really quick. But suffice to say, we're growing, and we hired a full-time production manager he's now doing the heavy lifting when it comes to the assembly and the QC, the packaging, the shipping, which is great. He developed an inventory system from scratch for us and implemented that. And it's been, we were paying him hourly, and we decided, no, he should be salaried and have health insurance because it's silly. And we can get him, ask him to do more stuff. And because it's not always like full balls to the wall work, there's ebbs and flows, and we have a peak season that's coming up. But in the summer and early January, after everybody's bought Christmas presents and things, sales are lower. And so there's less to keep up with. So we just started tasking with our stuff, and he's killing it. It's so great having him around now. So now we got the 3 of us where Matt's focused on big business stuff, on finances, on website, on logistics, on product development design, Andy's handling the shipping and the warehousing and the inventory. And then I'm handling all of our customer service and warranty and testing and media and other stuff like that. So
that's super exciting, man.
And we're just kind of making it work and figuring out when we need to hire somebody.
How long have you guys been in business? When was it that you sold the first unit compared to where you're at now?
I think it was 2017 for Matt. I think it was June of 2017. So it's been 4 years on that first initial product line. It was pretty slow initially, and then it's ramped up pretty aggressively past couple of years to the point where it's like, okay, we're not gonna we're paying everybody salaries now. We're not gonna go out of business in our garage. We're not killing ourselves, bending over backwards, trying to make something work and not making money. So it's sustainable now. But we're basically taking all of our cash and dumping it back into R&D and new products, trying to get more stuff.
That's what you do when you're starting, right?
Yeah, because we don't have that many products, and there's still a lot of things we want to do without making 1,000 different products. We can still fill a lot of other applications and kind of use cases that people are asking for. So we're just going to keep doing that, and then as new technology pops up, we can use. We'll do that and
100%.
Start working on some of these other features. But it's been quite a wild ride to quit my career in like the corporate world, company with 6,000 employees, where I've got this management path and high salaries and all that. It's great, but it was basically a job where you're beaten over the head until you quit. Which it sounds weird, but I actually kind of liked that environment. I had a really good core group of friends that I worked with. We all commiserated and we were in it together, and it
right.
I felt
misery loves company.
Yeah, but I've also realized there's a lot to be said for work-life balance and like mental health. And
there was a point in my career where I wanted to have like bigger budgets and manage more people, and I don't know, like it meant something to me. And then somewhere along the line of my life, like I've come to the fact like of knowing that like I don't really give a shit about that. And I really want to do something that makes me happy to like get up and do every day. And I would assume that has something to do with where I'm at financially. I'm sure I'd probably still be hungry if I wasn't making decent money. But, at the point that I'm at in my career now, I'm like, I don't really care. I don't really want to... Like I want to spend more of my life doing things that I enjoy than I want to spend doing something that gives me a bigger paycheck. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's we're all kind of on the same page here. We're highly motivated to do things better and to make something exist that doesn't exist. But we're not in this so that we could sell this to
some venture capitalist or something.
This company isn't going to sell in 5 years for a big payout for us. Like we're doing this so that we can enable our hobbies. Like I want to go on bike trips and have riding bikes be part of the thing that I get to do all the time with friends and industry people and all that. It's great. Matt is he's a rally guy. He's a rally car driver, and he's a pretty good one. And he likes to build rally cars. So he's basically doing this so that he can make enough money to support his family and play with rally cars. But
those things are expensive when they break too.
Expensive when they break, but he plays a lot of like rallycross stuff. So it's you're not building $100,000 race vehicle. You're putting something together. Actually, I might spend more on bikes currently than he spends on rally cars. Oh fuck.
I never realized how much money I spend on bikes until I started doing the YouTube stuff, and I was at that point being able to like have a business, and write things off. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll just hit Amazon up and see like anything that was a bike part. I mean, obviously that's related to what I'm doing as my business here. And you add that all up and you're like, holy shit, man, I spent a lot of money on this stuff. This is not cheap.
No, it's really nice being able to write stuff off for business reasons and have it be 100% legitimate.
For
sure. A lot of parts that I buy that are for testing because we're trying to make stuff that say to everything in the industry. And it's like, oh, I'm glad I'm not buying that out of pocket anymore. And they get some new stuff to play with. So that's one of those perks. Like we built out.
Are you guys traveling with the festival kind of like scene, a little bike fest? Do you guys do that too, or?
Yeah, a little bit. We're experimenting with that because we don't really know what makes sense from a like business standpoint for us to
Those are expensive. I mean, it's not like, people that aren't in the industry like may not realize that. I mean, you pay for that tent to be there. Yeah. And it's not cheap. It's not like $500 and you're the good, shoot, those Sea Otter, those tents are like 5-10 grand, I think, for a space in Sea Otter or something like that.
Yeah, I know exactly how much they are because we're going to be at Sea Otter. We're going to see if it's worth the money, right?
So, at the end of the day, it's like that has to like correlate to sales. to make that make sense, or you're wasting your time, like.
Yeah. And for us, it's a little different because, I mean, it's not different. We're just in that stage in our company's growth where we're still not most people who have been night riding before will recognize the name Night Rider or Light in Motion. They're kind of the 800-pound gorillas in the room, and they've been around for a while. They have a brand. We're still developing our brand, so we're spending a lot of time just trying to just get out there. But we're also not going to do that frivolously and just spend, $100,000 on advertising at festivals that serve no purpose. But we went to Bentonville Bike Fest, kind of did that on a flyer, and that worked out great. It was honestly, I was super impressed with the way that went off and the response from the people who were there.
I would imagine the festival is like that, or like a Sedona type fest where it's a little more intimate than Sea Otter. Like, at least for me, even going to Sea Otter as a media person, it's overwhelming. Like, so I can only imagine how it is to not even be a media person. Just walking around, you're like, it's like sensory overload, It's like, you got to kind of know what you're looking for, I would think, and maybe you'll bump into some stuff.
Yeah. And so, Sea Otter, it's expensive and it's big, and it may not actually be the best venue for us to spend that money. We did Bentonville. We're doing Sedona Mountain Bike Fest.
Oh, sweet. Well, I'll definitely see you there then.
Yeah, we'll be doing hosting some night rides with the Industry 9 guys leading the group rides, and then we're providing demo lights for people. So,
cool.
If nothing else, you get to check them out there. We'll drive our demo van down there that we built out. But we're also, we've got a relationship with the Maxxis Eastern States Cup. They do a big race series every year with a bunch of enduros, and this year they reached out, or they actually posted on Facebook looking for anybody who has connection with light brands, because they wanted to do a night enduro. And a ton of people who do their races threw out our name. It was great because like half the recommendations were like, you should contact Outbound. And so I just started talking to them, and we decided to do that, do two of those this year. So one was earlier in the spring. We got one coming up in October, and it's awesome because they have this set up like in Connecticut at a little ski resort where they basically are doing laps up the hill. So every lap you finish back at the start. So if anybody has any issues, they crash and they break something, we can get them fixed back up and back out for the next lap.
That's pretty rad. A night ride enduro. That sounds actually pretty fun.
It's great because so many people show up from all different backgrounds, where they either night ride a lot or they don't at all. And 3 stages during the day and 3 stages at night. So it's really cool to like listen. Like I just talked to a bunch of racers after the event, and they're talking back and forth between, the guy who has our lights, of course, who rides all the time, who is like consistently significantly faster on the night stages than everybody else, but then, is losing time during the daytime stages. And it's cool to watch them. Like that's just another thing that plays into how they ride, just like trail conditions, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's such cool.
So you guys sell strictly through your website, or you have are you on Amazon? Are you any retailers? What's the way that people can buy your stuff?
Fuck Amazon. We're not on Amazon.
All right.
We won't ever be on Amazon. We've talked with a few people like Worldwide Cyclerly about distribution at some point. For a couple of different reasons, we just haven't done that yet. The primary being we're still growing, and
there's no problem there,
because we're so seasonal in our revenue, because we're also pretty heavy on mountain bike products now. We've got a new road and gravel focused product coming out in the fall, but until then, majority of our revenue is coming from mountain bike lights, and that's heavily seasonal in the fall because we're also US based company. International shipping is kind of a shit show right now, so we're figuring that out to try to grow in other countries and be able to support them. Like the majority of our business is in the US, and that's, right now people are just starting to buy lights again for the winter. And so cash flow is a really big thing for us. And we honestly can't afford to take the margin hit going through QBP or BTI and these other wholesale distributors, because we need that money during the dead season. So because now is when we're putting money in tooling and new production runs and hoping that it all comes back in the fall, right? We're kind of exposed now. Yeah. So we definitely support
strictly through your website right now. That's the
right now it's through our website, but we do have some local bike shops that carry us, and because we're not going through Q or BTI, we don't push to shops. But if a shop ever reaches out to us and say, hey, we night ride a lot, we want to carry your stuff, absolutely, we'll set them up. We'll give them healthy shop margins so they can make money off the product and not just us make money. And we'll make sure they're well supported, because we ultimately want shops to exist. We all love our local bike shops that are good, and we want to support them. We want to do it in a responsible way where we know that we don't really have sales on our website. We get people ask us for discount codes constantly. We don't put sales on our website, and a big part of that is because we don't want to undercut shops. We don't want to sell product to shops and then have to go through this headache of one by one giving out smaller discounts to these other places and things. Like, it's just we just don't have discounts with a few rare exceptions, because we want the shops to be able to sell through them and to push people towards shops. And as we grow, then we'll have more bandwidth and more incentive to kind of get more shops involved and have more demo programs and kind of like a shop demo kind of thing. But that's kind of where we're at now. I think we've got probably 30, 35 shops around the country. So it's not a lot.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
It's something. And it's cool to get feedback too, because every shop's in a different climate and different area. And so, we got a couple of shops up in like Calgary that are heavy snow and fat bike riding. And the way they use their lights are very different.
Do you have different like problems with like the batteries and stuff like that and in the different weather systems? And
so absolutely, that lithium ion batteries and LEDs are both sensitive to temperature. Cold temperature generally helps with most things because the lights are producing heat while you're riding, but batteries are not one of them. Lithium ion batteries tend to tank on capacity. They get shorter lifespan the colder it gets. And we actually got a rider who talks to us a lot and gives us a lot of really valuable feedback from Alaska, who rides in, like he said, just out for a casual ride. It's negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit right now. And he was saying that, he had I won't say which competitor, but he had a competitor light that turned off after 15 minutes. And he had a Garmin GPS unit that wouldn't even turn on. It was so cold. And when he warmed it back in his car, it turned back on. But our lights were surviving. And
nice.
They weren't getting quite to their claimed run times, but they physically can't because of the lithium ion battery. So it was just cool to kind of figure out what really worked. And part of that is, our design puts the batteries themselves in thermal contact to the shell and the LEDs, because we actually want some heat to go into the battery to help keep it warmer when it's super cold. But he was like testing them, like because we've got these vent fins on the underside of our handlebar light that carries light right past the LEDs on the back of the LED plane and cools them down faster. So he was actually blocking that vent for riding so you can keep more heat in the light, and experimenting with that. And there's definitely challenges between the desert where you might have a night ride at 100 degrees versus sub-freezing temperatures where nothing works. It's pretty crazy.
So if somebody wants to look and see where I'm pivot a little bit. So if somebody wants to look and see where the shops are that you guys are selling through, do you have that on your website? Or
we don't currently. That's something we probably should do.
If
they shoot us an email, we can certainly tell them. Chances are there won't be covered because it's 30, 35 shops around the country.
Do you have anything in the Northern California area where I'm at?
Actually, I was just pulling up a list of shops earlier.
While you're doing that, man, I had a really good question too that had nothing to do with that. Now I can't even remember what it is. So there you go. That's the way the cookie crumbles at sometimes, right? I totally know how
I don't think we have anything in Northern California right now.
So what is what's the process like for somebody? Well, let me take a step back first. If somebody's wanting to get into night riding, what would you recommend that they go to your website and purchase? What would be like a good starter kit?
So I tend to recommend, if you're going to get one light, get the bar light first. Because I think it's going to be better for most people and most types of riding, particularly newer riders getting in. I think it carries a lot of, I think it's just going to be a better experience than having a underpowered helmet as a helmet light only. Because our helmet light is, I think it's a great light. I've ridden with it by itself, but I don't like it because we designed it to work as a pair. And I don't want people to have a negative experience just because they tried the one thing. And so I think a handlebar, our Trail Evo, Evo is everything's called Evo these days.
Right.
But our Trail Evo is the new hotness for handlebar lights. It's self-contained and super wide, very even beam pattern. So literally everything from the handlebar forward is lit up. So that little teaser image you had on the YouTube preview thing, that's a customer image they sent us of him on his bike, and that's just the handlebar light. And you can see there's light right on the ground, even behind the front wheel, so that you can see what your front wheel is hitting out of your peripheral vision and not have to look down with your helmet light to see that, right? So it's the Evo is what I'd recommend starting with. Honestly, if somebody's just getting into it and they want to, not spend a ton of money and ease into it before they dive into the deep end, find a friend who's got lights and just ask to borrow them. Get something and just go experience night riding in some way, shape, or form. That's, I think, step one. Like you said, you just don't know what it's like until you've done it and you realize it's different and it can be really cool. I kind of think of it like a little bit like fake meat sometimes. Like, you can't expect the fake burger to taste just like a beef burger, but it doesn't mean it's bad. Like a lot of stuff is really good. It's just you can't go in expecting it to be the same. So if you go in expect to ride at night exactly like you do during the day with no changes, you'll be disappointed. But it's not about that. It's about being able to ride anywhere at any time, and that experience is different. And it's not always worse. And in a lot of ways, like you're talking about earlier, it can be really more enjoyable and a better experience than just standard ride during the daytime. So
one of the people's in the chat here is asking if you could explain the difference between the Evo and the downhill packages that you have on your website.
Yeah, so we essentially have three main products right now. We have our Hangover, which is our self-contained helmet light, which for anybody that can actually see the video feed, I'll show you that here. This is that with GoPro tabs built in because we don't want to reinvent the wheel and have a proprietary mount. Most helmets have some provision for mounting a GoPro on them, and we figure we can keep it nice and tucked and close to the helmet, lightweight, low center of gravity, as simple as possible.
And if it doesn't have, if their helmet doesn't have a GoPro mount of some sort, do you have some kind of strap that you guys sell?
We have adhesive mounts that comes with that, and we use the adhesive like stick on base with a snap-in piece. It's basically standard GoPro fare. They've been using for decades because it works. Not all helmets are the same. I will say this: if you have a weird shaped helmet that has like vents running down the center, or it comes to a point like the Fox Pro Frame or the TLD A1, we have different mounts that we 3D print.
It's all right. You don't need to show it. So you 3D print some to fit those then.
And it's not a lot. So we didn't pay the several $1,000s to tool up parts for that, but we can 3D print stuff that is really durable and works for custom applications like that. So basically, if you got a weird helmet and the mount that comes with the light doesn't work, email us and we'll just send you the appropriate one for free because we just want it to work. And the reason we don't include every one of those in the box is because you're only going to need one. There's a lot of companies that include every possible way to mount a light to every single part of your bike or helmet. And I don't like that because one, we don't include a handlebar mount with our helmet light because it is designed for helmet use. Doesn't mean you can't put it on the bars and have it work, but it's not what it's optimized for. And we're trying to make stuff that's high performance, designed for specific applications. So we don't include those other mounts because it just generates trash and adds cost to the product. For us to add,
I think I sidetracked us too. We were the difference between the downhill and the Evo package. Sorry, I'm good at that.
Tangential conversation,
man. Let's go.
Like I said, I could talk about this shit for hours. So steer me back. Yes, the Evo and downhill packages. So there's Hangover is a helmet light. Evo is our handlebar light. They're both self-contained, USB-C rechargeable. The Evo downhill package is basically just the two of them together. So you get your bar light and your helmet light together. We have the older downhill package. We used to sell, I think we took it off our site now, is using our original trail light, which is an external battery. It's basically the product that they put Outbound on the map that lifted up the company, and the Hangover together. And we're moving towards the self-contained, where everything's similar aesthetic, similar design style, similar user interface. So it all kind of blends together as a good package. So the downhill package is basically just a handlebar and helmet light together, so that you have something that's designed to work together, that's balanced. You're not pairing two lights together that, like we talked about before. If you get somebody else's light that overpowers our bar light or vice versa, then you're kind of losing the benefits of both.
So what's the cost for the double package? Like if you're going all in?
$10,000. No, it's so the double package is $365 retail. The Hangover is actually, I need to check. I feel like we may have changed those costs recently, but it's basically $130 for our helmet light and $245 for the handlebar light. Discount for the package together, and we feel like that's
so. I mean, $360 though for two lights is not bad, honestly. Like
I don't think so. And
in my opinion,
you can pay a lot more for lights. You can also pay a lot less. But we're trying to confirm the adage that you get what you pay for. You're not just going to get, if you spent $25 on lights, you basically get it with the idea that they're disposable and you'll just buy another one if something happens. Which is unacceptable. We're trying to make it very clear to our customers that we will take care of them for everything after they buy the light. So we've got some, legal language around a warranty, so that around 3 years, manufacturer defects, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, the way we support our customers is we don't really ask a whole lot of questions except to figure out if something went wrong, how we can better design our product. Not to you don't need to show us a receipt or whatever. Like if you got a product that broke and it's whatever reason is, we'll just replace it or we'll fix it for you.
Let's figure it out.
And I kind of frame it as a don't be a dick policy, where we have the legal language so that 3.5 years go by and you email us and you're kind of a dick about it because the light stopped working because of some random thing or whatever.
You're like, well, my bike fell off. I left my light on my helmet on the top of the roof, and it fell down the freeway at 90 miles an hour. I feel like you guys should replace it. You're like, maybe not.
No. But we had a guy that left his light on his truck bed and then drove away, sitting on the edge of his truck, and he lost it. It was like the second ride, and he was just
that sucks.
It was killing him because he couldn't afford to buy a new one. And we're like, you know what? We'll just send you a new one. We don't do that for everything all the time because we keep taking advantage of us. But so far, everybody we talk to is a legitimate human, and we're happy to support people because it's a lot easier for us to stomach the cost of a replacement light for one customer than it is for that one customer to do it, right? And we don't want people spending money on product after they buy it, and so we're trying to approach it of the, just talk to us. You email us and you're a reasonable, nice person. We're going to take care of you no matter what. And I can say that confidently because right now I'm answering every email and phone call and text message and social media post that comes in. So just keep that in mind. If you're emailing somebody, it's going to be me responding. So
you might get a long-winded response. So
yes, that is true. I have some people like that. Other people are just like, okay, thanks. And they
Yeah, I over explain everything, but I mean, here we are. I'm obviously running a podcast, so I like to talk, right?
Yeah.
So we're around in the 2 hours, man.
2 hours. Yeah, almost made it.
Yeah, I know how it goes, man. Honestly, the time always flies by, and it's fun to chat with people that are, passionate about what they're doing. So it always goes by quickly. Do you watch YouTube outside of like mountain biking stuff, or you just watch YouTube at all? Or
And I do. It just depends where. Like I can't do that like while I'm working and focusing on emails or design work or anything like that, because I cannot absorb anything that's happening.
Yeah.
But honestly, all I'll do is I'll like some podcasts like this or things like I'll put them on long road trips and just listen. Just because it keeps me awake better on long rides. Or long rides.
I definitely do the podcast on the road trips too. The reason I ask is at the end of the show, I usually ask people what channels they like to watch, whether it's some underwater basket weaving guy or some dude that's building machine guns out of toothpicks or something like that. Like there's a lot of cool channels out there, and it's always fun to hear something that maybe's got your attention.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll go completely outside of mountain bikes then, because
it's fine.
So much good stuff there. And actually, buddy Dylan commented on the social media post earlier asking about my favorite metal covers of EDM songs. I'll go ahead and plug Andy Rayfelt. It's this guy who, as I understand it, he used to write commercial jingles for a living. So he basically has access to all these song tracks where he's got the individual like vocal tracks, drum tracks, etc. And so he makes all these mashups of like jazz Metallica and death metal Carly Rae Jepsen and Taylor Swift and stuff. And so he'll pull the vocals out and then recreate all the music behind it. And he makes YouTube videos where he'll get like live videos of them performing somewhere and then put it behind it. And like watching jazz Metallica perform like live at a big concert venue, and then the metal version of Taylor Swift songs, they're phenomenally entertaining.
There was one of my coworkers. He used to listen to this band. What was it called? It was like, I think it was called Hasty Dixie, and they did AC/DC, but in like bluegrass style. So they were all AC/DC songs, but like bluegrass, and it was really entertaining to listen to.
Yeah, man.
So what was the name of your guy again?
Andy Rayfelt, Rehfeldt.
Right.
If you just go and search for like jazz Metallica on YouTube,
it'll come up.
Pretty sure.
There's only one guy doing jazz Metallica.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Well, hey, dude, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with us. I've learned so much. It was really informative. I'll tell you, one thing that I noticed when I posted that you guys were coming on the show, instantly there was a bunch of people on there talking about how much they enjoy your products. And I think that's good to see, especially for our company that's coming up and, doing the best that they can do. And I just wanted to pass that along to you as well, because it sounds like what you're doing it right, and I'm sure I'm sure there's a grind to it and a daily, like, you don't always get to see that, like, that happy response, of people, but they're definitely out there like impressed with the products that you guys are making. So definitely keep doing what you're doing. I'm excited to see what comes in the future. It'll be great to bump heads in Sedona this year. I'll definitely be able to have a beer, maybe get out on one of your night rides. I have not done a night ride in Sedona, so that would be a first.
Oh yeah. It'll probably be kind of a shit show because it'll be an I-9 party ride and we have a lot of people and it'll be a mess. But we'll do that nonetheless.
My whole life's a shit show, so I should be able to fit right in. So anyways, yeah, man, I had a great time chatting. I don't know if is there anything in particular that you feel like we didn't cover that you wanted to let people know or anything like that, or?
Oh, I there's a lot we didn't cover, but I think after 2 hours, if anybody is still here listening to me talk about light stuff, then good on you. We'll probably be very good friends.
Right.
But I think, I just like you're saying, I just encourage people to get out there and try it because it's different and you get what you pay for. So don't buy cheap shit if you want to actually have a good experience.
Right. And if you enjoy having teeth in your mouth and your life.
Yeah, exactly.
bad lights equal bad dental problems.
Yes.
Right on, man. Well, like I said, great time chatting with you. All you guys out there, please take a minute to look in the show more. There's a link to their website. If you guys are listening, it's outboundlighting.com. You can go check that out. Check them out there. They got an Instagram and a Facebook as well. I think you got a little YouTube channel as well. So I think there's some videos over there on your channel.
Yeah, like 2 videos. We don't have to post all the videos.
That's plenty. That's more than a lot of people, man. So
we'll post more, but yes,
something over there. Either way, though, there's some different media outlets for people to kind of go and look and see what you guys are doing, and hit you guys up. Definitely check out the products. And if you want to do me a favor while you're on Instagram, give me a little follow over there at BiKER B1 or B1KER B1. The same thing goes with Facebook or Twitter, and you guys obviously know there's a YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed the episode, hit the thumbs up. If you really like listening to these podcasts in your car and you're like, why is he always talking about YouTube? And you enjoy the podcast a lot, go to your podcast platform and write a review. Only if it's good. If it's a bad review, you probably don't have time. You shouldn't do it. Don't worry about it. So with all of that being said, I do want you guys to remember one thing. If that's the only thing that you remember, it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.